Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste, the therapist from Boston, and I have a special guest. I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all, Dr. Gadh.
Hi, Celeste. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm in New York, so don't hold that against me, um, being that you're in Boston,
You know
because
we're
I
arch
do judge
enemies.
you for being in Boston. No, I'm kidding. But, I think it's unfortunate, by the way, that Boston is so connected to sports, whereas
I know.
really it's about academic excellence. The brightest minds really are in that hellhole of a place. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's
It's so
it's
nice.
hilarious because I give people a hard time all the time. So it's hilarious that you're doing it to me. I wasn't going to do it to you, but this is hilarious.
Well, no,
Yes.
right off the bat, let me just say that I've wanted to live in Boston. I still do, part-time, of course, and I
Okay.
would never root for any of your wretched teams. But but thank you for having me on, and I hope we can talk
Yes.
about, serious things in a way that enlightens people and elevates people.
Yes. And Dr. Gadd, it's really laughter is important for the soul. You and I, we've worked throughout the pandemic while we were in the pandemic with everyone, and it's been a hard few years for everyone. So I'm
Yeah, I
always
think I'll
gonna
save my COVID jokes. It's still not time.
right. Yeah.
And but they say laughter is the best medicine. I don't think it's actually medicine at all. I think it's an intoxicant.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think we get high off of laughter. I think it's the best thing
Yeah.
for, getting groups together and
Yeah.
contagion, right? That
Yeah.
laughter is contagious. It's
Yes.
a drug. It is the best drug.
Yeah.
But food
It
is the
is.
best medicine.
Yes. So Dr. Gadd is actually a doctor. And so before I get into what you're doing now, I would love to know, why did you choose that career path?
Yeah, I think the short of it is that I uh, always wanted to be a doctor, and when I went into medicine and medical school, I mean, I was just a furious curiosity all my life, and this was going to be the only thing that really satisfied the beginning of that. And I still have questions about the world of the universe, and always will. But uh, I think that once I was in the heat of medical school, I realized that this field, mental health, was such a quote black box. It was such a place that there could be discovery, there could be progress, because while we had come very far from the dark ages, from the stigma and the abuse of people with severe mental illness, and also the unawareness of how there was hidden mental illness all around
Yeah.
us, uh, that's where I could find more of uh, a passion ignited. It was most interesting as well as most useful to me. And then that was right when 9/11 happened. So, I was more or less there on that day at ground zero. And I found that my help as someone who listened and someone who um, comforted was more relevant than someone who was, taking labs and reading scans and such. So I think a lot of things came together, perhaps even my own past, as to why I chose this.
Wow. And when I know you're currently in private practice, but after I know you go through rotations in med school, what was your first career path in the mental health field?
Right. So, after residency at Stony Brook, which is out in Long Island, northern Long Island, beautiful place, I went to New York and Bellevue, which is synonymous with mental health,
Yeah.
right? Bellevue is one of the largest and oldest public hospitals that deals with everything, but especially is known for psychiatric treatment. A lot of psychiatric treatments were invented actually at Bellevue, antidepressants, for example.
Mhm.
But that's where I started. I said, look, that old adage, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And so you come to baptism by fire here in Midtown Manhattan, where people from all over the world were at one are still hospitalized, and healed, and there is a swinging door, of course, and there is also much to be perfected, and I've got a lot to say about that. But I think that it was a wonderful place to learn about the competence, about the compassion, and about the courage that is required in this kind of healthcare.
Nice. Now, one of the things, so I started my career path in the mental health field in about 2001, working at a shelter. I
Mm,
went to the shelter to work because I needed the money. But I was first exposed to addictions and major mental health struggles without any education. I was 19. And one of the things I understood about people is that they're misunderstood, and also that something happened. And, I read The Body Keeps the Score. That kind of confirmed my analysis of working in the field prior to me actually really being in there as a therapist and really getting deep into people's stories. What's your mindset around, addictions and mental health when it comes to in America and how it's diagnosed and just the trajectory of the course that it takes?
wow, heck of a question. And you mentioned one of my favorite, and most influential writers, Bessel van der Kolk, right, of MIT, The Body Keeps the Score, in terms of how trauma, which means wound in Greek, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
how trauma is embedded in the bones, as per that saying in the Dark Knight trilogy. I remember that line from Batman's future sidekick. But digression aside, it's really not stored in the body or the bones. It's really first stored in the memory and the
And
reactivity
then,
and the
yeah.
fear centers of the brain, right? The hippocampus, the amygdala, the thalamus, the
Yeah.
hypothalamus.
Yeah.
And that, when that's heated up, because just like when you traumatize an elbow, it gets swollen and energy goes there to protect it. So when you traumatize a person's memory, their soul even, and over you do that, the energy in the brain, which is entirely an electrical sponge with more pathways than you can count, it jams in the center. That electrical traffic jam
Mhm.
is hard to reduce. It's it's stuck there, and we often do things that keep it exactly where it is rather than taking something to alleviate the electrical traffic jam and therefore re-expose and reclaim the things we're traumatized by. So people who've had trauma are more frequently connected and associated with addictive behaviors. There's that association is known. The cause, again, trying to medicate that pain, that emotional pain, just like we do with physical pain, right? We
Yeah.
we may use
Yeah.
opiates to numb that pain. That's not actually going to heal that
Yeah.
broken arm. You're going to have to set it. You're going to have to rehabilitate it. So with addiction,
Right.
and I'm an addiction medical director as well as a private practitioner, and I'm a physician scientist. So I've done research, and I'm a commander in the U.S. Navy. So I've got a few different places that I contribute. But in the addiction treatment setting where I published, the route that I've gone is to say, look, there are three major causes of addiction. One is physical pain. That's obvious. Car accident,
Yeah.
other accidents, you overuse your opiates, and there's a tendency to then not actually rehabilitate the pain for some people. But especially when the injury is significant and it's hard to access that kind of rehabilitation, we end up overusing pain medication. There's also the over medication of emotional pain. And that's where trauma comes in: mistreatment, neglect, abuse,
Yeah.
sexual abuse, especially loss, grief. These are also traumas.
Yeah.
Heck, even being a certain race
Mhm.
or gender or sexual orientation in this country. And heck, being alive right
Mhm.
now as a kid and watching what the hell the adults are doing is
Yeah.
is a trauma, right? So
Yeah.
if then how do we
Yeah.
medicate that when we're saying we feel hopeless, to address this in any measurable way. The third thing that I screen for, at least, and there are other important causes of addiction, but the three big ones that encompass seemingly 80+%, so I'm just trying to get that B and move forward, is untreated ADHD.
Yeah.
And what that does is when people
Oh.
don't have economic stability, and it's hard enough to make a living. I think it's harder than ever to make a living today in America than ever before, maybe
Mhm.
notwithstanding the Great Depression, because of the way the tax system and the
Mhm.
way that our Congress has delegated any responsibility for economic welfare of working people. I think they're more interested in their campaigns, and that's where I would start, as campaign finance reform. But back to ADHD, if someone has an uphill battle in even getting, a GED, a high school diploma, a college diploma, if they can't even get those things, their chances of homelessness are
Yeah.
higher. And even when they've had those things,
Yeah.
to say, gosh, I can't even keep up with the work demands because number one, I've had ADHD. Number two, my smartphone is killing me, right? And number three, it's set up that I don't even make that much money relative to the cost of living. The median
Right.
income hasn't changed as much. That part leads to a sense of hopelessness that is then medicated as well. So that's my short. It's a long thing that I can speak about each one of those three concepts, but that is, I think, a better way to look at addiction, that it is not just innate, that people are not addicts, that they respond to difficulty with approaching what is available. And alcohol is very high and under discussed. Um, Not now, you have uh, drugs that are time bombs out there with the use of fentanyl and tranq and other things that, have soiled like the drug supply illegally was ever pure, but now it's remarkably catastrophic.
Yeah.
So we have to put more and more energy into the prevention of this, not shutting down the borders. We need to elevate our people. We need to put more money in their bank accounts, and we need to put more capability in their soul accounts.
No, that's good. What Dr. Gaddis is it's about. Oh, I think you're going in and out. You can
I'm
see me
back.
okay, Dr.
Okay,
Gadd?
yeah, now you're back too.
Okay. Okay. Uh, what is when you finances aren't met, when your needs aren't met, you're in survival mode, and I think that we don't realize that that could be a cause of some of the moods that we be. When you're talking about the amygdala and your system going into flight or fight mode, unfortunately, some people stay in that mode, and so the mind does not have access to any new information. Our mind access to new information. We're always I feel like people on this roller coaster road and don't realize how it is affecting their entire body when they're always on alert. Do you find that to be the case for people?
Yeah, I mean, that fight or flight used to be about safety, about bodily harm. That's how it was written,
Right.
and it's probably still written in the DSM. But economic well-being is
Yeah.
well-being, right? That is a threat when
Yeah.
uh, you know bill collectors and uh, your account as a working American is under assault, more or less. How do we put
Right.
it? Right. Again, this is not an economics
Yeah.
discussion, but I think that psychiatry is failing in many ways, but I think it's failing in the most significant way when it doesn't address the causes of deaths of despair. That's an economist term out of Princeton, that these were deaths of despair. And I think we're seeing that more than ever today. So I kind of feel sometimes like I am, spitting in the wind. And if I didn't have this realization, and if I didn't have this method and the use of low-dose lithium. Happy to talk about how that helps me in this uphill fight, because it's still uphill until we get folks like you who have a forum to talk more about campaign finance reform and then tax reform. Because if I was, interrupting our time or my patient's time to talk to a pharmaceutical rep, I probably would not have the kind of credibility that I feel like I have. Because if I told you, no, and if I had Risperdal or whatnot pens all over the place, behind me, you'd say, well, this guy's biased. He's clearly coming from a place where he's been paid to say this. And that's where I think our Congress is coming from. If they're spending most of their time talking to donors, if most of the emails that I get are asking for money, forget about what real donors are getting, right? And what kind of attention they're getting. That didn't used to be the case.
Right.
People don't get that. Back in the 70s, that was not the case. And you can draw a line between campaign financing, healthcare, education, housing costs, and how those go up like this since the mid 70s, and how median income goes like this. Relatively, even with COVID inflation and such, there's a huge gap between that is purchasing power we've lost. So therein lies the debt and the desperation that we're seeing. So you could put lithium in the water. That would be wonderful. But you'd still have to get, people to pass sensible tax reform, sensible reform of the middle class that is being hollowed out. And, I sound like a socialist, but, we pick and choose. Socialism after 65 is fine, apparently. And seems to be working really well in Scandinavia, and I've been there. It's nice, where people don't have to worry about going bankrupt if they get sick, right? Or from college.
Right.
Anyway, that's where I think we're failing is not explaining this link. Most psychiatry talks are about go get help. Mental illness is not a problem. That's great. It's true, but also. Our treatments are okay, are not as good as they could be. And that's why people are gravitating towards some alternative options like psychedelics, like just saying, forget it. I don't even want your help because I've tried it. And all I get is sexual side effects, weight gain, and bills.
Right. I appreciate you sharing some of that backstory because one thing I found when I work with people is the knowledge and the education around what's going on really helps. It helps them kind of have grace with themselves and realize like there are other forces that's happening that is creating the struggle that they're having currently. So, I think that knowledge is definitely helpful when it comes to this. Now, you're mentioning lithium, right? Low doses of lithium. My experience in the mental health field, I started in '01 and, back years ago prior to me being in the field, they were locking people up in psych wards and it was a mess. And I've heard horror stories around lithium. So can you explain to people what lithium is and why there's some horror stories that people have around that medicine?
Sure. Let's start with what it is and then the horror and then the dream. Okay. So it is on the periodic table. It is a natural element. It's a salt. It was created in stars and at the Big Bang. It was more or less the dynamite that exploded the entire universe and created it. It is a conductor of electricity, right? We think of lithium ion batteries. That is moving electricity on this iPhone I'm talking to you on this laptop in front of me, on the scooter, on the Tesla, etc. And so if we look at it simply that way, it moves electricity as a salt, as a very light metal, the lightest metal. So physics, history, electrical conduction, how does that tie into the brain and the problems of its reputation? Well, lithium was originally used for very severe persistent mental illness, specifically bipolar disorder, in terms of the highs and the lows. And the lows
Mhm.
of bipolar disorder are catastrophic. It has the highest suicide association of any
Yeah.
mental illness diagnosis, more than schizophrenia, more than major depressive disorder or addiction, even.
Mhm.
So, in terms of those catastrophic lows and the manias, which could be so
I know.
disruptive
Yeah.
to family and that person, uh, it is the best treatment for bipolar disorder, yet it is underutilized for bipolar disorder. It's underutilized in psychiatry currently, period. It's number 25 of the top 25 medicines in psychiatry, which is mind blowing to me in a bad way. Uh, the bad reputation, as in everything that is on the periodic table, the devil is the dose and so is the angel, right? And
Mm.
with this metal, if you go above a certain amount, you start to get negative effects. And perhaps a long time ago, we're talking 40 years ago plus,
Right.
people were given liberal, let's say, amounts of this and not
Okay.
monitored appropriately. So
Okay.
perhaps it, thanks to also sensationalism of Hollywood, right? The Cuckoo's Nest and certain
Yep.
movies and things that say, okay, well, this is just associated with madness, but it is
Yeah.
actually historically one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories and health minerals ever discovered. Historically, and I'm talking going way back to ancient Greece, to indigenous peoples of North America, to South America, to Japan, to anywhere there is lithium in water and had lithium in spring water, those regions were and remain healthier. That data has been replicated around the world. By healthier, I mean not just better mental health, lower suicide rates, lower homicide rates, lower crime rates, lower Alzheimer's rates, psychosis rates, and cancer.
Wow.
All of that has been shown. Now they say, okay, association is not causation. You don't know how that's happening. But frankly, we ban cigarettes. We don't know how cancer occurs, but we do tax them because we know they're connected.
Right. Right.
But guess what? Guess why you would imagine lithium to be, lathered up in its toxicity reputation? Because it is
I,
pennies.
well,
Because there's nothing to be made from this. There's no money to be
I was
made from
gonna
this.
say, with it being a natural element, you can't patent it. So then
There
pharmaceutical
you are.
companies are not gonna be able. So
Right.
probably was it by accident that it was associated with all of these negative things? Wow.
By
I have
design.
chills. Just
Yeah, me
wow.
too. And you will have more chills when you see the recent studies. When you look up the term low dose lithium, you will see a different array of results. If you just look up lithium, you're going to see the usual boogeyman stuff, right? And even that is really inflated. Of course, if you take
Yeah.
1,500, 1,200 milligrams a day, and we'll give you an amount, a gradation here, okay? 600 to
Yeah.
1,200 milligrams is the bipolar dosing, which is about 150 milligrams on average of actual elemental lithium, okay? Now, all the way at the other end is the amount present in Earth, all right? Lithos, lithium, it means rock. It is already in you. And every rock and every being on this planet has lithium in them. It's an essential trace element. So the amount in the water that is healthy, so to speak, is 1 milligram of elemental lithium. Not
Mm,
150 over here, but one, right? So less than a
okay.
percent. Now, if you look up
Wow.
low dose lithium, you'll get the range of about 20 milligrams, kind of in, not one, not 150, but about 20 milligrams of this is very powerful. And the latest on
Wow.
it is talking about, I'll show you my whiteboard here in my office is filled with doctors and conditions and people that I'm working with and mechanisms. And it pretty much has every, anti-inflammatory condition up there from long COVID to cancer prevention to microbiome diversity, weight loss, pre and post MI, post stroke, CTE, and REM sleep disruption. I mean, all these have current studies published and or being published on them. Alzheimer's, if I didn't mention that. So I think that's a new frontier and such an effective weapon because, look, and I do take this myself, I would tell you right out front that 150 milligrams, I take it and it's the reason I'm like 50 and look pretty good and can hang with my kids, right? Barely, but still. And so again, as an anti-aging mineral, there's nothing better.
So you went to medical school and now you're doing something opposite than what a lot of psychiatrists are trained to do. Do you ever get ostracized from your community of psychiatry? Is there any backlash for this new study and what you're doing?
Maybe it's already happened. It's happening every time I talk to someone about this. But I think there's also, I got to speak truth, right? As it's not just my study, right? I've done 2 studies, one on addiction, one on COVID, and I stand by the results. The open source data. There's no hiding anything here. One was done with MIT's help. So again, God bless Boston and Spain's health system. But the number one result on low-dose lithium searches now is a meta-analysis coming from Canada, which has a health system, right? Below that is Tufts University, again, out of Boston. And if you continue, there's just a brand new one from University of Buffalo who is studying the use of lithium for post-COVID syndrome in, again, microdoses, because we certainly don't want to say that this is the same thing, that this should be used at high doses. No, of course not.
Right.
But you can also overdose on potassium. That's in the lethal injection. So we want to talk about how this is a bridge. I'm not anti-medicine. I'm not, into the quackery of ivermectin and quercetin and everything else and refute vaccines and things like that. I want a bridge. I want to say, guys, let's have a truce. Let's get the best of God's medicine and man's medicine. Right? Nature and nurture.
Right. Especially with, we just, talked about the pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, people were struggling, but even more so now. My mindset is, why not give people the opportunity to see the different modalities that are out there? Because, what works for Celeste may not work for Dr. Gadh, and vice versa. And so with this information being out there, I feel like people can explore options, because I just see people are really hurting, and I think it's going to take a lot of different things to get us to a baseline, or to a place of, feeling like we're living life and not just surviving through the motions of life.
Absolutely. And people will say, you talk about this so much, you call it, you almost talk about it as if it is a panacea, that it's a cure-all.
No,
and I say,
no.
And I can sound like that. Trust me, if you get me lathered up, I can go off. But it's not a panacea. It is a panauxilia, which means it helps all. Just like if you have iron deficiency, things are harder, right? Yep. And your iron needs are different than my iron needs. Right? Yep. Same with fluoride, and children should not have it. And there's, at certain points, they should be getting a certain amount from somewhere. But all of these very micro and more known minerals, metals especially, it just helps bring the body together. And that's what I think lithium is, and we'll see more and more. So just having it on board will help people do a little less harm to themselves, and also counter the harm that is coming at them.
Yeah. Where do you it sounds like your motivation or your purpose and passion is you want to see people do better, especially thinking, I didn't realize like you were there on ground zero, helping people, talking to people. I'm sure that was very traumatizing early in your career. And over the years, is that, your passion is just kind of wanting to see people get to a space where they can thrive?
Yeah, I kind of want to, get back to having a good time, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think once upon a time that was possible. We were in a
Yeah.
place of, seemingly strong, linear, progressive growth, morally and spiritually, and maybe even economically. Maybe that was all a facade in 1989 because I thought the music was better back then. But,
It
you know,
was, though.
but Iron Curtain coming down and coding the human genome. These were big breakthroughs around then. Uh, Turn of the millennium and the power of the internet. And now here we are staring down, the earth on fire. Okay.
Yeah.
And while the earth is
Really.
on fire, we can't even cool our own tempers and take out the people who are literally trying to nuke us all. While we self-destroy or allow artificial intelligence to do it for us. We're on like three
Right.
different crises at once.
I
And
know. I
there's no
know.
realization that, guys, this earth has sent what sounds like its own immune system after us. After all, a virus
Yeah.
is the earth's messenger of DNA to attack people that are pretty much sucking it dry
Yeah. Yeah.
and
When
giving it a
it
fever.
when it comes when it comes to you and your day to day, because you do really hard work. It's not easy to sit and do this work. What is your modality outside of lithium for healing? Because I think it's important. I think sometimes people think people like you and I that we work with people, we have it all together and magically comes together. And I tell people we do work behind the scenes. We have to be okay in order to sit and do this work. So what does your regimen look like?
Um, Probably a bit mad, uh, but I think
Okay.
I try to embrace, you know, possibility and something special in as many moments as I can. And I try to check
Yeah.
myself when I realize that I am behaving or at the on the edge of behaving, uh, in a destructive way. But in short,
Okay.
look, a workout is not even going to be enough, Celeste. If I'm going to go
Right.
to workout, which I do 3 times a week at the
Yeah.
gym, my wife and thankfully we have enough help that I can do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's default. I'll bike to work, so that's a default tiny bit of exercise. I have a kettlebell in
Yeah.
my bedroom. My wife thinks
Right.
that's crazy, so that helps.
Yeah.
I run around with my kids as much as I can and make sure that when I'm with them, I'm trying to be right there, and I leave my phone outside of my bedroom, right? And I burn in. People are burnt out. I get it, but
Hmm.
I am this conversation.
Hmm.
I've been looking forward to this. I
Hmm.
admire your work, and I admire that you have, again, amassed, uh, people's trust. That's pretty awesome. To do it on a large scale like this, and so this sort of thing fires me up.
So what I'm hearing Dr. God said for my listeners is that he tries to be in the moment, and that's an important knowledge to have, because if you are dwelling on the past and worried about the future, anxiety can easily take root, and trying to be in the moment can be challenging. But like when he's playing with his kids, he tries to put his phone away. There are little things that we can do, and so I definitely want to challenge you to be mindful of the little things. And I know there are so many major things that are happening now, and we can't tackle them all. But just trying to, and I tell people, take it one moment at a time, one day at a time, and trying to get grounded, because, like we said earlier, staying in that state of fear breaks down our bodies. A lot of autoimmune diseases and things like that, inflammatory diseases happen because of, the way we're activating it with our thoughts, which I understand. Me and Dr. God just explained different reasons why that takes place. And now that you understand the reasons, really trying to get into the moment. Do you think that's pretty a good statement to make for people?
Yeah, I know that you summed it up really well. Clearly, you've been a therapist for some time. Uh, I think the thing I didn't mention that is important is faith, right? That,
Yes.
I think even the greatest scientists, Einstein, for example, Da Vinci, they knew that one without the other, faith without facts, were both incomplete or without
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
That that if we can't bring the unknown and emotion and couple it to logic, we're just as good as some chat GPT crap, right? We're not human. And the human
Yeah.
element is love,
Yeah.
is which is really faith, which is the unknowable, which
Yeah.
is the hope.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
think that also allows us to connect with each other. That's been such a
Yes.
factor in people of color communities, my certainly the Hindu community, and certainly the African American community, and maybe
Yeah.
it's lesser today in terms of attendance. So maybe that's an important place for us to re-establish, as well as the fact that God may be in fact below us, in terms of the earth, not above us, but wherever God is, perhaps as my daughter says, God is love. That's it. And it's just,
Yeah.
let's come together in the worship of that.
Yeah. Wow. You're really amazing. I really have been excited about having this conversation, and just through your bio and some of the I've watched you on other podcasts, and your passion speaks through. It's in your voice, and I know there's not a lot of people like you, and especially being a psychiatrist. There's I struggle sometimes with the medical model here in America. The more I've learned about the way things have been going on over the years, I realize some harm that's been done, and so I appreciate your voice on this podcast because you clearly have people's best interest at heart. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you for acknowledging. And yeah, I mean, I just hope people can be better to themselves, each other, and the planet.
Thank you. If people wanted to learn more about your studies, uh, the things that you've done, is there a place that they can go to check it out?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of options. One is to, again, simply look up low dose lithium, and therefore they can do their
Yep.
own due diligence on it.
Yeah.
They can go to my website,
Yeah.
SudhirGadMD.com. They can also go to a product that I have been a part of that I started that is the nutritional type of lithium. Now, I don't have a monopoly on lithium. You can get it from a lot of different places, but
Right.
this is something that I formulated with some folks in Minnesota,
The
that is kind of
water.
like that is third element water, which was originally from Texas, but now we've packaged something that kind of tastes like a lemon lime sports drink,
Okay.
Gatorade-esque, I can say, with a little fizz in it. So I want to
Okay.
see this as, the ultimate electrolyte drink, because lithium, I think, is the imperial electrolyte. And so thirdelementwater.com, you can read about studies related to nutritional lithium. It's all there. You can, of course, order some of that powdered supplement that includes the 8 essential vitamins and minerals that we also don't get, from iodine to calcium to iron to magnesium upwards, including just 1 milligram of lithium. So there's a lot of ways you can go about this. You can talk to your doctor
Yeah.
about it. You can get a different supplement. You can go to our supplement page. But I think the more that they read about this, the less fear that they're going to have, especially after they try it and see that, this is just like I have had a really good night's sleep. if you get the right dose after a right period of time. In fact, the original 7 Up was bib label lithiated lemon lime soda, and it's called 7 because of atomic mass of lithium is 7. It made you feel up. That's what the
Wow,
original
I didn't
7
know
Up was.
that.
Yes.
Oh, snap. I had no idea. Really quick, because you just brought up something I've been seeing on TikTok. People, you talked about the different calcium, iron, and magnesium, things that people, there's some low deficiency. And I've seen people on TikTok talk about they thought they were depressed or this was happening, and they ran their labs and they realized these elements were very low, and it changed a lot for them. Why are those elements that you mentioned low for a lot of people? Is it the foods?
It's the food and it's economics again, right? So number one, the ability to get high quality vegetables,
Fresh.
grains, fruits, and even good quality, meat and meat products, animal products, is really connected to your socioeconomic status in that area. There are certain
Oh,
things called food deserts; those are real. And then you talk about
yes.
even when you are getting to Whole Foods or whatever market you're going to, unless you're going to some pretty artisanal farmers markets, a lot of our soil is undergoing forms of erosion, so that these market items are reduced in the nutritional content. So while
Oh,
doctors will say, "Oh, get your vitamin C, get your vitamin D from X, Y, and Z," you can't even get it as easily anymore because of the soil changes and because of the
oh,
ability to even get those things economically. So we should be taking supplements. We are 10% literally of Americans are deficient in either vitamin B, C, D, zinc, iodine, believe it or not, iron, magnesium. They're all, give or take 10%. So this is real. And plus sunlight, we're not getting any of that to activate the vitamin D. So because we're all locked in and working all the time, so or driving to work. So that's why I included those top 10 at the proper doses, because I didn't want to just choose
yeah,
randomly. I wanted to choose based on math, based on how am I going to make this a
yeah,
really special product, and not just put 1 milligram of lithium in it. I can do that,
right.
but we can put more into that powder so that if you're a performer, if you're an athlete, if you are academic in your mission, if you are just a parent who is stressed out, right? If you want
Yeah,
preventative aspects of lithium plus everything else you need,
yeah, the
it's
stuff,
just a
yeah.
fizzy
Oh,
Alka-Seltzer
wow.
like Gatorade.
That's amazing. I have chills, and I really appreciate this because I I struggle when people just beat themselves up and think that something's wrong with them, and not realizing there's a lot of changes that have happened over the years. I'm 40 years old, and I feel like years ago the food tasted different. I can afford to go and eat high quality food, but growing up I wasn't afforded that, and I realized like there's so many socioeconomic ways that people not because it's their fault, but where it's they're not getting the things that their body needs on top of everything else. And so I feel like people listening to this can start to say, oh, okay, this is what's happening, like, and really think about different ways that they can work on their mental health, because it's not like you're defective. There's real
No,
things
and
happening.
that's a really important point. And it's not just mental health, it's physical as
It's
well.
physical.
This applies to,
Yeah.
the condition of obesity, diabetes, heart disease. That is,
Yeah.
they're the number one killers in this country. And it's not
Yeah.
because people are morally or, defective in any way in that way. They're not just
Right.
choosing to eat this
Right.
way. They are
Right.
being given very few choices of something
Yep.
without any high fructose corn syrup. And that was not the case before
Nope.
Congress allowed itself to be, excuse me, bribed as easily as it is.
Yep.
That they've just said, okay, we're gonna give you more or less the the most effective dopamine activating natural chemical there is, which is
Yeah.
sugar, and create a
Yeah.
Frankenstein sugar and put it in everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we would like to take your money so that you emotionally eat even more.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll
Yeah.
also add some abuse on top of it,
Right.
just
Right.
at the
Right.
usual traffic light. But
Eh,
then you compile that, and what are people going to do? They're going to
Yeah.
find solace in packaged items that taste really good because they're designed to. So I'm
Yeah.
not someone who's about. I love my country. I've served my country.
Yeah.
I'm an American exceptionalist, but we can do so much better if we
Right.
have people in Congress that are there for people, not profits.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good one. You're giving me a podcast ideas. I gotta really, I want to dig into that more. I'm sure following the money, I'm gonna go back to that time frame and look at the stats. And it's probably gonna be scary to see,
It
scary and
is.
sad. So thank you so much, Dr. Gadd. You are amazing. I appreciate you and your energy. This was, I don't always get chills when I talk, but I love learning. I tell people I'm a slow learner. I had to read, I had to listen, write, and then it gravitates. And so I love having these conversations because it really helps me understand things better, and I can pass that knowledge on to people as I'm working with them. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Talking with you is force multiplying, and really happy to be here. And still, I hope that the Red Sox are useless this year.
Dr. Gadd.